Cade Stover moves back to tight end. What is the best position for Cade to play so Ohio State can be the best football team it can be? And we answer a listener question at the end of today's show. All that and more right here on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes, part of Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Wednesday, March the 30th in the year 2022, and I would like to thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes your first to listen of every single day. You heard that correct. About a minute ago, Cade Stover has decided to move back to tight end. No, this was not the position that he was recruited to come to Ohio State to play, but he thinks this is the right position for him to play in the upcoming season. Cade Stover was recruited to Ohio State to play play linebacker. Let's get the positions correct, Jay. Let's move forward. He was recruited to play linebacker at Ohio State. He moved to defensive end by the end of his freshman year, and then he moved to play tight end over the next 2 seasons, which was last season was a part of that 2-year window. Rose Bowl week, not Rose Bowl month, literally Rose Bowl week, a few days before they played the Rose Bowl, the Buckeyes, that is, Cade Stover went to defense because the Buckeyes needed him to play linebacker due to some injuries and because they thought that he would be a better option than the other guys that were healthy. Next thing you know, Cade Stover does a phenomenal job at playing a linebacker in the Rose Bowl. Jim Knowles gets hired as the new defensive coordinator for Ohio State, and many people believed, and still might believe, that Cade Stover is one of the best linebackers at Ohio State. I don't think that is going to go away with anything I say today. I still think some people still think that Cade Stover is still one of the best linebackers that Ohio State has on their roster, no matter if he's playing tight end, linebacker, defensive end, it does not matter. But this decision to go back to tight end was ultimately his. Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day, they give their players a lot of freedom. They trust them. They believe they can make and they will make the right decisions for them and where they think they should be on the team. And Cade Stover, this was no different. Cade Stover, his decision to go to linebacker was his choice. Cade Stover, his decision to go back to tight end, it was his choice. All of the things going on here, they are his choices that he has been making. And I think this is huge. When you look at Cade Stover, something you may say, Jay, what are his stats? Like you may say, Jay, I'm coming into Ohio State, don't know much about the football team. I'm trying to learn about the football team. This guy, Cade Stover, I keep hearing a lot of things about him. What were his stats or what are his stats at tight end? Why would he go back from playing linebacker to playing offense this upcoming season? Well, Cade Stover only has 5 catches at tight end. They all came during last season. 76 receiving yards, 15.2 yards per reception, 0 touchdowns. Those are his illustrious, sarcasm, I hope you can feel it, stats at that position. When it comes to defense, he has stats in all 3 years at Ohio State on defense. Now, of course, if you're getting a tackle and you're playing tight end, you're ultimately, at least in 2020, that was because of an interception and things like that, was not playing defense at all during that season. For his career, Cade Stover has 16 tackles, a half tackle for a loss. He had 1 forced fumble in the 2020 season. Now, last year's stats, I'm going to be honest with you, all of his defensive stats, I do believe he had 11 tackles in the Rose Bowl. I believe all of his stats there. He didn't have a defensive tackle, I don't believe, or a tackle when he was playing tight end, saving an interception from going to the end zone, being a pick 6. 11 tackles, a half tackle for a loss last year for Cade Stover. Now, why are people saying that he is a great fit at linebacker? He said it himself. He felt free. He felt like the shackles were loose. And I even said on a previous show, I did a Mary Mary song, and now the lyrics escape me. But I did a line from a Mary Marisol because someone on the YouTube comments was like, Jay, he really just did that. I said, yes, I did. I'm trying to have some fun. But he felt loose. He felt free. Cade Stover, that is, playing linebacker. He felt like somebody that was in the right position for him. Now, when Cade Stover looks at the linebacker position, defense, learning a total new defense, knowing that Jim knows terminology, knowing that Jim knows might go from three linebackers to two linebackers, to having a true jack linebacker, which is more of your stand-up 2-point stance kind of guy. Might have a Leo linebacker in there. Probably the jack is probably what is jack linebacker is, or jack lineman, defensive end. I've heard that term a whole lot more recently, even though Ohio State has not used the Leo position that we talked about pretty extensively about a month or two ago when learning more about this new defense. Well, Jim knows going to be able to have variations and have different packages for different players to come in. I don't know if Cade Stover is going to play all year at tight end. He may play both sides of the ball. That's a conversation we might have later in the week. But I do think there's a little bit more familiarity when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, playing tight end. You've been there for a little bit. You've been there longer than you've been at linebacker. You know Kevin Wilson. You know Ryan Day. You know CJ Stroud. You know the team needs. And this might be an ideal spot for him and this team. I think that when Ryan Day gives his players the freedom to make these decisions, it not only shows the trust, but it helps these young men to really assess and know everything that's going on, or try to analyze the situation in their own way with the help of people around them so they make the right decision. I do believe that Cade Stover going back to tight end could be a phenomenal thing for Ohio State. Yes, Ohio State is a school that does not use a tight end in a way that you're going to be like, well, I want to get 35 catches. I'm going to have 6 touchdowns. I'm going to have so many yards. Like, I'm going to hit all these benchmarks at Ohio State playing tight end. I'm going to be a second-round draft pick. Like, that's not normally how Ohio State tight ends have gone of late. I don't think it's going to change at all anytime soon, because Ohio State and Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson still want their tight end, their lead tight end, to be a phenomenal blocker, which is what Cade Stover is for this team. Cade Stover has decided to move back to tight end, and I personally don't think it's a bad decision or a bad move for him or the team. With Cade Stover going back to tight end, some of you may be wondering, just like I was, what is the best spot for Cade Stover with this team? Is it playing tight end? Is it playing even H-back, where Mitch Rossi has played so well? Is it going to defense, playing linebacker? Is it middle linebacker? Is it weak side linebacker? Is it the Sam or strong side linebacker? Is it the jack defensive end or jack lineman that we've heard about more recently? What is the best spot for Cade Stover and the Ohio State football team? Well, I think when you think about the depth chart or Cade Stover, where he's going to play, you have to think about the depth chart and who is there right now for Ohio State at these positions. When you think about the tight end spot where he currently is going to be playing next season, you have Joe Royer, who is thought to be tight end 1 prior to this move. You have Mitch Rossi, who is more your H-back, not your traditional tight end that in the way that Ohio State and Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson have used the tight end at Ohio State. He is 6'1". Most of Ohio State's tight ends over the past few years have been about 6'5", 250, 255. Now, Rossi has the weight. I mean, he weighs, I believe, 245, 246. But sitting at 6'1", it's a little bit of a different height difference, height advantage for the other gentleman, a disadvantage for Mr. Rossi. You also have G. Scott Jr., who I do believe is not even up to the weight that Ohio State and Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day want their number 1 tight end to be. I think he's up to like 230, maybe 235. I said maybe 235. I don't know where he is currently with the weight, but if he's at 235, think about Luke Farrell, Jeremy Ruckert. Think about some of the other guys that have been at Ohio State. The names escape me. I don't know why Hireman's first name escapes me. Nick Vanette, some other guys over here under Urban Meyer. Think about them and their weight and the way that they played the football. Now, maybe G. Scott Jr., not maybe, it's true, a better catcher of the football. No problem saying that at all. However, also think about his skill set and if his skill set is currently the best suited to be tight end one at Ohio State. And then think about the linebacker position, where many people think that the Sam linebacker will be Cade Stover, or the outside linebacker, depending on packages and things like that. You have still Chambers, who's still playing the weak side linebacker. You have Cody Simon, who is thought to be the middle linebacker. Tommy Eichenberg, he's been coming on of late. You have freshman CJ Stroud. You still have Taraja Mitchell, who is out there as well. You have Diamante Tranum, or Chip Tranum, as they call him now, who is also going to be someone that's out there that are going to be trying to get all these linebacker reps and linebacker plays during the game. You have all of these guys there. What's the biggest need for Ohio State? Cade Stover going back to tight end. Because if you remember a lot last year, we saw quite a bit of Ruckert and Stover on the field together. That was a Ryan Day thing. That was what Ryan Day wanted. Let's have these two tight ends, these two guys that are about 6'5", 250, 255. Yeah, they know they're not going to be called upon to really get many passes, catch the ball a lot, score a lot of touchdowns. They're not going to be called to do a whole lot of those things. But they know their role. They can excel at their role, and they can be somebody that, when called upon, they can be a big piece of this offense to make sure the ball continues to move down the field at a swift pace, at a consistent pace, so that every time Ohio State has the ball on offense, it's touchdown, 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 touchdown. Yes, that's the plan, and I do believe that Cade Stover puts Ohio State in the best position at tight end one for them to be as successful as they can be. Now, you say, let's go back to this now. New defense. And let's just think about Ohio State using that Leo linebacker, or Jack defensive lineman, a 2-point stance kind of guy. The 2-point stance linebacker could be in the A gap, could be in the B gap, could be on the outside, could be at the linebacker depth. If it's just a defensive end, and you'll know who that is the closer we get to the spring game and the closer we get to the start of next season. If it's just a defensive lineman, well, he could be moving all over the place. And I've seen a freshman in Caden Curry do that very thing in high school numerous times, from a stand-up nose, head up, head up over the center, to shading the center, right guard over in between right guard and center, or in between left guard and center, 2-point stance on the outside. I have seen that freshman do that very, very well while playing in high school. Some people say that Jack Sawyer could be that very Jack defensive lineman, to where he's moving around the line of scrimmage and occasionally dropping into coverage, rushing the passer, all from a 2-point stance. I've heard Jack Sawyer. They said Mitchell Melton has been there as well. This defense has a lot of pieces. Yes, it was young last year, but this defense has a lot of pieces that you really don't think Cade Stover needs to play defense. Now, it would be a luxury, a huge luxury, if at some point Ryan Day finds a tight end in the portal. I don't even know. I haven't even checked the portal lately to say who's in there, or who's at that high of a quality to come in, learn the offense quickly, who already has the body type that Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson want for this position, so that when he comes in, all he has to do is quickly learn the playbook, and baby, let's go. Let's ride. Let's move this football all throughout the upcoming season. I am perfectly fine with Cade Stover going back to tight end. I'd be perfectly fine with him playing defense. Would he play both ways? Can't get too deep into that right now. Come back tomorrow to hear more about that. But that's always an option when you think about a guy who has played linebacker, who has played tight end, who might be switching positions once again. Is both ways the best option for him? I think personally the best option for Ohio State right now, currently constructed, is him at tight end, playing one way. Let Cody Simon play the middle linebacker. Let Steel Chambers play the weak side linebacker. If you have other guys that are trying to get in those spots, either CJ Hicks as a freshman, Tommy Eichenberg, Reed Carrico, can't forget his name. If you have other guys, Chip Tranum, Taraja Mitchell, if you have other guys that are trying to get in that spot, that's great. That's their job, to compete, to get on the field. That's phenomenal. But I still think, when I look at the depth chart at Ohio State's tight ends, I don't see a reason why Cade Stover, if he chose to be a tight end this upcoming season, I don't see why there is a reason that Ryan Day or Kevin Wilson or Stroud may step in and say, hey, bro, look, I know what you think you need to do or what is best for the team. I know what you think is best, even possibly for you. But how about you go back to the other side of the ball? Warrior has this. Rossi has this. Sprinkling G. Scott Jr. every now and then. He has this as well. We got this side of the ball. How about you go back to defense and do your thing over there? This isn't me trying to put you away from me or not be a part of the team. This is simply me trying to help the team be the best that it could be. I still think, even if that were to happen, a conversation that was hypothetical were to happen, I still think the best spot for Cade Stover with this team is playing tight end. And it's phenomenal that Ryan Day allows his players the freedom that they have and for them to be able to make wise decisions about their future. Cade Stover, a player that many people have high hopes for, a player that I have been looking forward to as well, is a player that could be a leader on this team. And this question that I'm going to be taking from the YouTube comments, not saying the name, but I do believe this person deserves an answer. And it's an answer longer than something that I could put into a YouTube comment. So I had to figure, why not just use a podcast space, YouTube space as well, to go ahead and answer this question so everybody can hear the answer to it. This is coming from YouTube. Quote, Jay, if the conditioning of Ohio State football players is as subpar as you contend, I've heard you bring it up on at least 3 shows. How do they keep putting so many players in the NFL? Thanks for all your content. Have a great day, end quote. That's a phenomenal thought, phenomenal question. You might say, Jay, when did you think their conditioning started to go down? How do you think their conditioning is going to improve? How are they putting so many guys into the NFL? Is that indicative or is that a reason why there are not so many guys in the NFL draft this year that are playing at Ohio State? Well, let's go back to a couple years ago because I don't think this was a perpetual thing, something that was always there. I don't think that if you go back to all these different draft classes that Ohio State has had, that all these guys going into the NFL, if they're not properly conditioned, they're not strong enough to play the college game or to play the NFL game. Let's go back a few years, 2018. Denzel Ward, Billy Price, Tyquan Lewis, Jerome Baker, Sam Hubbard, Jalen Holmes, Jamarco Jones. That was the Ohio State draft class in the NFL draft in the year 2018. I never thought at any time, 2018, 2017, that any of those guys' strength and conditioning was down, was diminished, was going downward. I never thought that. 2019, I want to read these names off to you. Some of you, this is going to bring a little memory, a little blast from the past. Nick Bosa, Dwayne Haskins, Paris Campbell, Draymond Jones, Terry McLaurin, Kendall Shepard, Michael Jordan, Isaiah Prince, and Mike Weber. I never thought at all during that time. I think that part of the reason that the 2021 draft class, 2021 draft class may have been part of the reason that many people started, not so much them, but many people started to say during the 2020 season, there's a different look with this team. Now, notice I went back to a couple years prior. I'm going to read the 2021 draft class here in a second. These names I'm going to mention, I don't believe the strength and conditioning was a problem with them. I think that year for Ohio State, the reaction to the COVID and the strict restrictions and the things that have happened at Ohio State that are just a response, not just Ohio State, but the Big Ten as well, with how they responded to COVID-19 and that reaction there. I think that was a result of how Ohio State looked when it came to how healthy they looked on the field, how healthy they played, how quick and how well their mind and brain reacted to what happened on the field. I firmly think that affected the team on the field. I firmly think that. I'm not even saying that the whole season, even though they played less games, they had games canceled. I still think during that year, as good as that team was, as talented as that team is, I still think that team was not fully conditioned as well as we would have liked for them to be due to the circumstances, because there were so many restrictions and things that they could not do. No matter what I thought or I expected for them to be during that year, how I expected them to look during that year, I firmly think that a lot of those guys that got drafted that year they were going to be looked that way no matter what. They were going to be that way no matter what. They're going to play that way no matter what. The 2021 draft class comes after the 2020 season. Justin Fields, Pete Werner, Josh Myers, Wyatt Davis, Trey Sermon, Baron Browning, Tommy Togiai, Luke Farrell, Sean Wade, and then Jonathan Cooper. The one thing about Cooper, which is not a knock to him with his strength and conditioning, he was just a little bit undersized for a 4-3 defensive end. That was it. Now it's just for the NFL wise, I thought he was a little bit undersized for that. Also, you could put guys into the NFL that might not be up to the normal standard at an Ohio State for the strength and conditioning, because there's 32 teams. There's 7 rounds in the NFL draft. And there's going to be guys that are going to be drafted that you might say, that guy has no business being on an NFL team. That guy has no business getting drafted. That guy has no business being on a training camp roster. That's our thing. That's what we say. But the teams ultimately make the decisions. They see your film. They see your tape. They know what they have done in their research. They know the people that they have talked to. And maybe they think, hey, give this guy a shot. We have a spot we need to fill. We know he did some good things in college. We know that he is a player that always gives his all. So how about we get him into our professional environment? How about we get him into an arena in a place that we know he can be successful, that we breed champions, that we breed players and athletes that get to their best? How about we get this guy around here? You don't have to be in the best shape, you may want to say. Now, I'm going to say this very delicately and properly so I don't mince my words. There are guys that get drafted that are not the caliber of the elite of the elite of the elite schools when it comes to their strength and conditioning. Happens every single year. And this is not me saying FCS or D2 or D3 players. I'm saying FBS level, Power 5 level. There is a certain level of strength and conditioning for an Ohio State player, a Clemson player, an Alabama player, an Oklahoma player. I believe that and USC, the name escapes me, the new coach out there, I believe he's going to raise their level of expectation for strength and conditioning for them. There's a certain level that you need to be at that's expected for you at some of these programs. That does not mean you're not going to get drafted. And these executives in the NFL, these GMs, these scouts, these coaches, they know what Ohio State has done for decades, not just over the past 5-10 years or 20 years, for decades when it comes to talent that they're putting into the National Football League. Yes, you can get drafted and not be up to the standard that has been set at Ohio State for the strength and conditioning, not just for the Buckeyes, but if you want to win a national championship, there's a certain level of strength, of conditioning you need to be at to last a grueling 12-game schedule, a Big Ten championship, a conference championship game, and then 2 playoff games. There's a certain level of conditioning you need to have, not just physically, but mentally as well. So yes, there are players that were at Ohio State that have not been up to par. This is more of a recent thing. This isn't a history thing, more of a recent thing. I think part of it was due to the COVID. I think last year there were just a lot of young guys, and that kind of was a big reason why JT Tuamaloa even said, coming in July 4th, coming in later, he was not in the best shape and he was not in the best condition as he would have been if he came in earlier. Tyleik Williams lost 40 pounds. I mean, these are the words of the players at Ohio State that people were saying, put him on the field, put him on the field, put him on the field. We remember Mayan Williams in the 2020 season when he was even talking to, now he was coming off of an injury, but he was even talking to Tony Alford saying, hey, coach, I'm ready. It was either Mayan Williams or Crawley. One of the two was coming off of an injury. And they said, put him in, put me in. And coach just kept saying, you're not ready. You're not ready. You're not ready. He was not saying you're not a good player. He was saying, due to your recovery, you're not ready for this level of ball right now. Conditioning coming off of an injury is key. It's huge. That does not mean down the road you might not get drafted. That does not mean you are a player or a person that might not meet the standard of conditioning at Ohio State and you still will you won't get drafted. That does not mean that at all. But the standard at Ohio State is high for a lot of things. There's a reason why on Twitter, During the Rose Bowl, a lot of players, former players, were saying, this ain't it. We got to go to the Woody and talk to them about this. This ain't it. What we're watching, this ain't it. Now, part of it was the youth, but it also was something going on, not just physically, but mentally with the players, that what was going on the field, it wasn't it. That does not mean these players cannot get better and that they will, and they won't have a shot to get drafted. Think about this upcoming draft class, or guys that are potentially going to get drafted: Master Teague, Chris Booker. Well, these are names that could. Chris Olave, Thayer Munford, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Jeremy Ruckert, Tyreek Smith, Haskell Garrett, Antoine Jackson, and Demario McCall. Some of you might remember, people have said, are they conditioned to play at this level consistently, starting level consistently? Antoine Jackson had a breakout game and started to play a whole lot better, but was he a consistent starter for Ohio State for over a couple of years? Was his ability that was gone, was knocked? Sometimes just players got to get challenged and they have to get better, and the conditioning gets better. I don't know if all these guys will get drafted, but I do know that Ohio State, there have been players. This is a couple years kind of a thing, not a snapshot of the past 20, over the past couple years, where the strength and conditioning have not only been questioned by myself and others that have been on the podcast, but also people that cover the team, former players as well. There's been something missing. That does not mean Ohio State will not consistently put guys in the NFL year after year after year. I hope that answers the question. If you have any more, this person also who this question is about, is coming from, if they have any more questions, feel free. DM, email, YouTube comment, doesn't matter, at jstevens07 on Twitter, jstevens317 at gmail.com. If you want to email me, or even if you want to drop another YouTube comment on this video, I don't mind. Send all your questions, all your thoughts about the show. Send them right back to me. I greatly, greatly appreciate it, guys. Thank you once again for making Locked On Buckeyes your first to listen of every single day. Now make your second listen the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Ryan Tracy and former NFL defensive back Eric Crocker. Make sure you check out their mock draft Monday show. Yes, it's a couple days later than it came out, but it's still relevant to what's going on right now with college prospects that plan to get drafted in the upcoming NFL draft. The Locked On Buckeyes podcast and the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, both podcasts are free and available on all platforms for your enjoyment.